Hey, Jack.
Hey, what? What's going on, man?
That's not much.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, I finally get to see the studio.
Yeah, right?
Uh,
The cameras and
ha-
stuff.
I I've always wondered, how do you switch between, like, do you have three recordings at once,
So
or do you just switch through them?
I have like a widescreen monitor IRL, so um, I kind of just have like one view recording all three, and then just
Ah,
edit them together
okay.
after. Yeah.
I see. That's cool. Anyway, good to be here.
Yeah, man. What you been up to? How's life?
Well, I've finally got around to playing the game T for God, and I have never been more acutely aware of the limited size of my play space in my entire time playing VR. But I love the idea. I think we need more games that push the boundaries like that. Of do the things that people generally say you're not supposed to do with VR. So, like, for example, Boneworks would not have as big of a following as it does if it just played it safe, right?
Right.
You know. But by the way, can you hear the air conditioner in the background?
Oh no, you're fine.
All right, good.
Wait, so yeah, I've only seen a few clips of T for God, and I know it's sort of like it messes with non-Euclidean geometry, correct? Like you can walk infinitely.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about it is, I have a really small, like, I just barely meet the minimum requirements for room scale, right? So, I never feel confident enough to just take a full step. I feel like I'm just kind of like claustrophobic all the time, and but I do recommend the experience to anybody that has VR, just to try it like once, because it's really unique to actually be like moving around without, like, these controllers that we have, right? And um it's great. I like the idea. I want more games that like do unsafe things with VR, because even if these ideas don't really pan out all the time, it shows aspects that most people are not willing to explore most of the time, and that's just a wonderful thing, because you get the amazing stuff like Boneworks, like Blade and Sorcery, and all that stuff. You know.
It's true, man. It's also because it's like such an early, in the grand scheme of things, like we're right in the beginning of the industry, so it's like this is the time to experiment. Try to see what works.
Yeah, I almost kind of like fear VR going mainstream, because we're gonna reach a point, kind of like how we did in the normal industry. Like, there's now. Let me preface this. Like, what I'm about to say is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with any particular genre of video game. If you like something, then you should like it. Don't let what I'm about to say influence that. Anyway, so I've noticed that there's a huge trend of over the shoulder cinematic experiences, especially on like PlayStation, right? And there's nothing wrong with that genre. I just feel like it is the most um it's the video game equivalent of like a Marvel movie. It's like, that when you go to see a Marvel movie, you're not gonna get a bad experience, right? You know what you're going for. You go there to watch shit blow up, popcorn, all that. Um, but you come away from it often like not really feeling like you got something unique or special, or and at least in my experience. And I think that there's got to, I worry about there becoming there's a point in VR where we're going to get to that point where it's like, oh well, I want to make a VR game. What genre do I make it? Well, this popular game sells a lot of copies, and that was successful, so I'm just going to make my game like that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I'm sure it'll happen. I think I think that's kind of inevitable though, right? Like there's the Marvel movies. There's like kind of
Jack,
the what's up?
I'm not hearing your mic.
1 second.
Please stand by for technical repairs. Thank you for your patience.
Microphone check 1 2.
I can hear you now.
That's weird. It's like
Yeah.
a
It's okay. That part can be cut out in post.
yeah. Just let me know if
Anyway.
it drops that. But I was saying, like, I feel like that's kind of inevitable in an industry because, like you say, you have the Marvel example, and then you have like books that follow a specific format, and people write in that format. TV shows, but I think it'll evolve.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
When you say over the shoulder, do you mean like the sort of like what's that game like?
I mean, like the the new God of War reboot, The Last of Us.
Oh,
Generally like Order 1886, that kind of stuff.
right.
It's a very specific like archetype of video game that a lot of people like, and don't let whatever I'm saying like detract from that. I just personally think that's like the safest possible game you could make. And there's nothing wrong with making safe games, but I want to play the stuff like T for God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about like Quill, like the where you're in VR but you're controlling like a little character on the ground. I could see that
Quill.
happening with the little mouse.
I haven't
game.
played Quill yet.
I haven't either.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about Moss?
Moss? That's it.
Yeah, there we go. I loved Moss actually. I thought Moss was great. Yeah.
But I can see that format transitioning. Like you could have the God of War type game in VR with Quill. What were you gonna say?
And that'll help. Games like the game type, that I'm talking about, will help VR actually like go mainstream, because you can get that one game that has mass appeal. Even if you make a lot of it, there's still going to be passionate indie developers making other kinds of games. So I'm totally fine with that, right? I just kind of worry about oversaturation of that kind of genre. You know what I mean? Like, it's because when you have the industry only making like one kind of game, it gets kind of disheartening after a while, but there's clearly an audience for it, and they get to enjoy whatever they want, and that's great, because choice is always fantastic.
I just can't wait for Assassin's Creed 45 to come out.
You know what? Assassin's Creed is actually a great example to bring up, because that series varies so wildly in quality within the series itself. Like, there's some games that are like I freaking love Assassin's Creed 2, and but I don't like the direction that Odyssey is going in, where they lean heavier into like the RPG mechanics, right? Because I like the old school Assassin's Creed. That stuff is cool. They just drop you into a world and just let you have your assassin like parkour power fantasy, and it's great.
Yeah. I love franchises like that have like a setting, and they can kind of like continue in that setting, but also like bring some variety to it. It's interesting.
Right. So another thing I've been playing lately, and this isn't a VR game, but it's called Worlds, right? And it's not the Worlds most people know, which is that old like online kind of metaverse thing, but it's a game on Steam by a company named Curious Planet, and they they name their game Worlds, and so when I tell people about it and they go and search it up, it's not even like the first result on Steam, and it's just really hard to find. But I love it because it while the graphics aren't like AAA quality, the actual game is like got a lot of heart to it, and I like that. And that's a key word here, heart, right? Like it's really difficult to define heart in a video game, right? Because it means something different to everybody, I think, and it's you can always like sense it. You can always sense when the developers care about making their games. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's like this underlying vibe. I feel like
Anyway, so what's enough about me rambling about video games. What's going on? Like, what's going on with you?
can you hear me right now? Mic check.
Oh, I can't hear you again.
It was in this moment that Wyatt and Jack found an hyperdimension virtual reality bug that was affecting their communication. The issue has been promptly fixed, allowing for uninterrupted vocal transmissions across the metaverse. Thank you for your patience, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Oh, okay, there we go. There we go.
Okay. If it happens again, I might have to just restart my game.
Understandable. I hate how when you hit the trigger, like you get out of the seat. Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to fix it. But yeah, no. Back where you were saying about the heart, it is interesting. Like you can always sense if it's there, and then you can almost 100% sense it when it's not. You know, like when it's a game that's just been like thrown together and kind of not to say. I mean, I don't. People always put effort into a game, right? It's not like you could throw it under the ground, but when there's like a passion behind it, it's great.
Right. And you know what I think it is? I don't even think it's a matter of passion. I just think it's a matter of like when you're making a AAA game, it's getting sent down, like every aspect of it is getting sent down like a line of like hundreds and hundreds of people. And that just kind of like, man, I have so much respect for people who work in video games because it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It is not an easy industry to be in. Like I sit here and I talk about heart and you know what genres I like and don't like, but I respect anyone that gets the chance to make any game because frankly I couldn't do that job. I'm not I'm not cut out for making something as amazing as an entire world to explore and mechanics to go with it, you know.
Yeah, man. Like all the moving parts too. It's like,
oh my god, yeah, like
so many people.
like I have you know, I'm glad that YouTube as a whole has kind of moved on from like the angry reviewer kind of archetype, right? Because I like to look to the positive aspects of something, right? Because when you look to the positive aspects, you can focus more on that, and then what you can do is refine those positive aspects, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Definitely. There was someone in the Discord that was asking, what do you think makes like a good VR game as a whole?
That's a question that doesn't have a solid answer because it really depends on the genre of game that you're making. For example, if you were making a puzzle game like Portal or a horror game, you would want to focus on atmosphere, right? But when it's an action game, you want something that stands out and feels good to play. Like, for example, there's a game being made right now called Crunch Element VR Infiltration. That it's focusing on complete destruction of the environment, right? And I think that's got loads of potential. And the guy who's making it, I recommend watching his devlogs because he sounds like super pumped, and his excitement is like contagious as he works on that game. Then you have stuff like what Anton is making with hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades, right? Like where he's putting so much effort into making all these weird like guns and gun combinations work in unique ways, and that's fantastic. You have Half-Life Alyx, which is focusing on atmosphere and lighting. right? And generally just being an entry point to say, see, you can make games like this too, right? And you don't even need like fancy physics on your arms or anything like that, right? Then you have Boneworks, which is trying out full presence, right? And while it may not always work out because, you know, physics are physics in a game engine, right? It it allows you to do insane things like you know, climb anything in that game. You can get a crowbar in that game and not even use it as a melee weapon. You can use it as like a hook, kind of like an Assassin's Creed, to just swing on things. It's great. So in short, what I think makes a good VR game is taking a good idea and refining it until it stands out among everything else. Because if you make something that is wholly refined, it doesn't really matter if other aspects of your game are not as good as that one thing that you're doing. It's great. This is going to be a controversial example, but there's a game called Blood Trail, which is like the hatred of VR, right? And that's working on trying to make a dark and like gritty atmosphere, and to do that, they're working on a kind of uncomfortable like gore system in that game, right? You know, so it's like that I think refining certain things is the path to making a memorable game. So that's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, no, it was well said, because it's like we're so early that we're seeing like the segments of different genres, and then like you said, like focusing on one genre. What I'd love to see is like a game that takes all of them and combines it into one, you know, like a standardized thing.
Well, when I talk about these games that refine individual things, I call them pillar games, right? Like you know, one pillar on its own is just a pillar, right? But a bunch of pillars can hold an entire foundation up, right? For example, Anton with his amazing amounts of guns in H3VR, that's a pillar. There's the full body presence of Boneworks, that's a pillar. There's the amazing atmosphere of Half-Life Alyx, that's a pillar. One day we will get a game that combines all of these things, and it's going to be amazing. I can't wait.
What do you think it's going to be called? Like, it's probably going to be an anime vacation simulator, I'd imagine. Yeah,
Well, one thing's for certain, it's going to need a lot of time and a lot of budget.
Hopefully. I'm sure it'll happen in a decade or so.
Oh yeah. Well, until then, I'm pretty satisfied with where the VR industry is. I've touched on this in a episode on conversations, but like I truly am grateful to like anybody that makes these pillar games, because they're showing raw potential in this new medium of VR, and it's great. I love it. It is fan-freaking-tastic.
100%, man. I think you're gonna look back on these times with fondness, the early days, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I fully believe that I'm going to look back on where VR is right now the same way I look back on Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, like games I grew up with, and I imagine other people are going to do the same. In fact, I imagine in the future, once we perfect this whole like HMD thing, that people are going to intentionally try and recreate a screen door effect just for that retro feel.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Like artificial FOV too, sort of look like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be funny. Huh.
So I think that AI is going to help sort through some complex questions in the future. I think that pooling together enough data can make something great. For example, AI Dungeon. Have you ever played AI Dungeon?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, AI Dungeon's fantastic. It's like Zork, but you can do whatever you want in it. It's wonderful. Um, and I expect to see more stuff like AI Dungeon, but for like actual life questions and complex problems and all that stuff. And once enough refinement happens, I think people are going to be okay with not being able to see an AI. How do I put this? You know how people get creeped out when they see the Turing test and the AI just passes with flying colors, right? Um, I think people are going to eventually be okay with that, kind of like in the movie Her. Have you ever seen Her?
Yeah.
With Joaquin? Yeah, it's going to be kind of like that, I think. Where you notice nobody like around the main character is like, oh wow, what a weirdo, he's talking to his phone. It's like I think we're gonna reach the point where it's gonna be so natural that is just a thing, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like that's in a way we almost have that now. Like there was this app I downloaded the other day where it's like you're texting with a robot, and you can still tell the AI is kind of dumb. It's like a chat bot basically, but
They're
you think
trying their
like,
best.
yeah, I mean, it's getting closer where it's almost like this robot then has a personality and it's sort of learning back and forth. I think the app is called Replica. So it's kind of learning like from the conversation, and it'll bring up like stuff you talked about before. But yeah, I think the next step is going to be the voice. Like once it starts sounding like a human, which I've heard that Apple and Google purposefully make the phone assistants sound kind of robotic. I don't know how true this is, but the theory is that they make it sound more robotic so that people don't get creeped out. I don't know.
I can believe that. I don't have any substantial proof of that.
Yeah.
I mean, anything's possible in 2020, man. Anything.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Do you have a like an Alexa around or anything? Like have you subscribed to putting
Oh
a
no,
speaker in your home?
I barely use my smartphone, honestly. I use it for work, basically. Because most of my friends are on like either Discord or Steam, so I don't really ever see the need for that unless I'm using Discord or Steam on my phone.
Yeah, right.
Right.
The idea of like a Google Home or something, always listening. I'm not a paranoid guy, but I don't know. I'm not ready yet.
It's not paranoia at this point. They have like verifiable information that stuff is recording. I mean, I heard once that the reason that smart TVs are so cheap nowadays is because they cut the cost of a smart television by selling user data, right?
Ooh,
So, yeah. So,
crazy times.
Look, there's really, like, as I touched on in the Week in VR video that you did, like there's not really much we can actually do about that, unfortunately. So get comfy.
Well, I think an individual could kind of take the minimalist route. Like
As long as you read every single extensive EULA out there in privacy policy. Oh man, I wonder how many people actually do that. there
That's
was
like
a
a
South
part-time
Park
job.
episode. There was a South Park episode about that, where they parody the Human Centipede, and it's like, no, you you signed that we could just basically do whatever we want to you.
Yeah, that's great shit.
Oh man.
Yeah, you need
Yeah.
like a part-time job to basically read all those. You're signing up so long.
That or regulation so that people aren't allowed to do any particularly heinous stuff with that. But that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, the regulation stuff is tough because I feel like technology just moves so fast, and the people creating the regulations are like old. They're boomers. They don't know what's going on. So Nothing against boomers. I like boomers.
I don't think it's always boomers. I think it's also people who are generally like used to social media. I think Frank Zappa said something about like how the younger generation, the older ones are the ones that are going, oh well, what's this? Fund it, go ahead, do it, right? But like the younger generation is like, oh no, I know what they want. I know what that demographic wants, and such and such. Reminds me part from a let me see. A poem called "The Genius of the Crowd" by Charles Bukowski, and that poem kind of sums up my philosophy on people in general, as depressing as that is. But I think there's a little bit of cynicism is good for you because it allows you to not buy into hype, right? But that just makes it so that if you're expecting something to be bad, you're never disappointed, because this is why I have such a huge passion for VR and stuff. Like I go in thinking, oh well, what's this neat little game, and then I play it and it's amazing and I love it. Like I'm not always expecting a Boneworks or a H3 VR or a Half-Life Alyx. I'm going into a game thinking, oh, I've looked at these screenshots. This looks kind of neat, and I pick it up and it's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, for example, Horizon Vanguard, that just came out. I love that game. It is the most perfect like summarization of the soul of arcade games I grew up playing, like Time Crisis and Virtua Cop and House of the Dead. I made an entire curator on Steam inspired by that game that was just looking for stuff that was kind of arcadey and not like going for immersive stuff. And I feel so bad because like developers send me their games there and I'm just like, I'm gonna play these games when I'm ready and I'm in like the right headspace to do it, right? So that I get the best possible review. And then now I have like a backlog of like 30 games that I mean to play and review, and it piles on top of each other, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's cool. How did you get into curating on Steam? You just like started?
Yeah, I just started a group and I was like, hey, well, I'm just going to do this as a hobby, like a side hobby, because I feel like one of the biggest problems with VR right now is that you still hear people say, oh, well, VR has no games, right? Like, and I go, that doesn't align with what I've been doing. There's lots of games for VR and nobody has a marketing budget. That's the problem. I think the problem with the game industry in general right now, for people who say that, oh, well, the games were so much better back in like 2004, right? Or some arbitrary period of time that they grew up with, is that the discoverability of video games that are up someone's alley is sorely lacking right now. I think they're in Steam is doing their absolute best to like solve this problem. They've got the discovery queue, they're constantly refining their search algorithm and all that stuff, and it's just sometimes it's helping, but it's sometimes not enough, right? So I'm always thankful to like YouTube reviewers, because they're just a bunch of people who like what they like, and then they tell other people about what they like, and then people that like what they like are finding their channels, and that's everybody's happy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough nowadays too. Like even with like videos, movies, TV shows, there's so much content. It's like it's so difficult to find what works.
Yeah, I can't imagine like being dissatisfied with an entertainment industry, because even if you have like a negative opinion of like the popular stuff, right? Like there's always something out there for you. You just got to find it. The thing I tell people is don't wait to hear someone say a hot take about it on Twitter. Don't wait for it to like a game journalist to cover it. Go like right now, like pause this video and go look at the upcoming games on Steam and you will absolutely, well, at least probably find something that you like, something that interests you. And you know, once people do that, they're gonna be set. I certainly am.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. There's nothing more exciting too, like than finding like a hidden gem, where like maybe the cover looks kind of cool, and then you load it up, and it's like, oh, this is actually pretty rad, It's
Yeah. It's really it's really nice to have just so much choice. It's beautiful.
trying to think. There's like a I feel like it's always like Korean games that were like there you can't really read the description. I remember like opening this one Steam page for like this amazing looking wave shooter. It was all in Korean. It didn't know what the story was, but I loaded into it and the graphics were like incredible. The gameplay was a little mediocre, but like it's always cool just to like see, what they're making across the water.
Are you thinking of a game called Bright Memory? Because that's a Chinese game, and the graphics are incredible in that.
It was like a demo almost. It was like 15 minutes. I was like in a spaceship, and then we landed on a planet, and I was like
in a spaceship,
like a pod.
All right.
If you had to pick like one VR game that you'd be stuck in for like a year right now, what would it be?
VR chat.
Good answer. Yeah.
I mean, it's an infinite well of content. You can find anything that you want in VR chat. We're in VR chat right now for this podcast, and it's like, so it's. You can find anything from this kind of place to a relaxing beach somewhere, or a straight up horror map. If you want to play video games, you can play like the murder game mode, or you can play that clap music game. I forgot what it's called, but it's in the Udon Alpha Spotlight.
Yeah.
You have everything here. I would want to be here.
Yeah, no. Definitely agree, especially with Udon, man. Those are like some really cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that.
Right.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like with the recent SpaceX launches. Have you been kind of keeping up with that?
I check in on it occasionally. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of have, or to know that they're doing that, even with all the the chaos on the surface of our planet now. But I'm thinking more like, okay,
yeah,
we're starting to adventure out a little bit. It's starting to become a little sustainable, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Then I imagine like, okay, a couple 100 years, if we are able to have like space stations and we are separated from the day and night cycle of our planet, I feel like VR is going to be a huge role in kind of keeping a certain amount of like circadian rhythm. I mean, obviously you'd have lights in the space station, but being able to like, communicate with someone across stations in an environment where it's like, we're meeting up at 3 p.m. and it's a shared daylight, shared moonlight. I'm sure it'll be like VR chat version 5 or something. But
yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I think that is ultimately the goal of humanity, to explore the stars, because if we just stay on Earth right now, it's a ticking clock, right? Like, but one of the reasons that every time I'm on a Disrupt show, I talk about like video games instead of current events is because stuff like SpaceX and video games is stuff that we can all agree is awesome. Right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are, what part of the world you're from. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, space, and cool entertainment, It's so yeah.
Yeah, it's universal. Though I don't know, I've met some people that have the opinion that we need to fix what's going on Earth before going to the stars. But it's like, we've been here for thousands of years. I don't think we can fix it much more than it's already.
Going to space and fixing Earth are things that can happen at the same time.
Yeah.
But we should be working on both equally as much, because in case the one or the other fails, that's the thing. So, always leave every opportunity on the table.
Mm-hmm. Except underwater. I don't think I would want to live underwater.
Well, nobody wants to live underwater. Have you seen the deep sea creatures that are out there?
I did. That's the one thing that gets me. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Under the ice.
Man, I've seen some crazy shit that people are taking photos and video of in like the deep sea.
Yeah.
That's you want a real life horror experience? Go like check that kind of stuff out.
Even the the Titanic VR experience, where you're like in the submarine going exploring the shipwreck. That is like, that freaks me out.
That's a fear called thalassophobia, and it's the fear of like deep water, and it is a totally justified fear, especially considering that like going deep enough underwater can literally kill you from the weight of the water, and so the animals that are living underneath the sea, like the fish and stuff, they don't even need to do anything.
Free food, fast food.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's obviously a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, but
I didn't notice.
Yeah, I know it's news to me too. News to me. But something that people should keep in mind is that everyone thinks that this year is the worst year ever, right? Like we were thinking that in like 2016, 2017, 2018, it just seems like it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But we will survive. That's basically what we need to keep in mind. As long as you keep your empathy about you and you listen to other people and all that stuff, you're great. You're set. You're golden.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful.
Especially like not to downplay the suffering and the
right.
The job loss. It's tough for a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to kind of keep the perspective of like, in the grand scheme of history, we're pretty well off. Like we can still have food, can still, at the very least get food stamps. So it's it's tough, but like at least we have modern medicine, research.
I think we're gonna recover from this. It's gonna take time, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna suck in the meantime, though, obviously. But I don't like. I try not to talk about this too much because, first of all, I come from a perspective that isn't like really in the thick of things, right? And I hear about it on YouTube and social media and general conversation from people around me. I'm not like actually like out there in the middle of all that chaos, and I'm glad that I don't really have to be frank. So maybe it isn't best for me to be saying about how things are and aren't going to be, but I'd like to think that we've gotten ourselves out of some real doozies in history, and I think that we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I think that we need to, above all else, I think what's missing from the world right now is a kind of like earnest positivity about certain things. Because I can sit here and rant for hours about how awful things are and how privacy is getting eroded and how all that stuff, but Truthfully, what I think is most helpful is to try and instill hope in other people instead of fear and hatred. Because when you do that, the progress happens. We go to space. We repair relations with people. We go and try and act like we have a future to hold together. Because if you don't think that there's going to be a good future, then it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, as far as I'm concerned. Because you're thinking, oh well, why even try and make everything better? You're just gonna like, why not just be like as horrible as the rest of the events, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not productive. That's not helpful, in my opinion. This is kind of the reason that I don't use Twitter anymore, because it's like, I think dropping Twitter from my life was one of the best things that I have ever done. It is so liberating. Just like take a vacation from Twitter for like one week. See how you like it, and if you don't like it, then you can just go back, right? Like but it is worth a shot, because I think that the kind of stuff that Twitter constantly puts on your timeline is not good for anyone's mental health in general. So
100%, man.
And this is, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, like I also like unfollowed everyone that I was following before, just to like clear it, and it's so nice, man. It's like this mental clarity. Yeah, I agree.
On one hand, it's not good to like stick your head in the sand and ignore current events, but I mean more like taking a break from them, because when you're lifting weights, for example, right? You can do like however many your arms will let you do, right? Same thing with hearing bad news. Your brain can handle a certain amount of bad news, and once you reach that limit, you probably won't even know. Unlike when you're lifting weights, because it's just a slow and gradual process that feels like a type of unique insanity that I've only experienced from the internet. And that is the double-edged sword of everything. The way that I try and keep things in perspective is the concept of yin and yang, right? You just want that equal thing constantly spinning. You don't want to go too far into the yin, because you lose out on certain perspective, and you don't want to go too far into the yang, because you're just gonna be miserable all the time, right? It's just, so I think that there's something to be said about having hope about things, even in hopeless situations. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, man. It's I actually found like during this time, it's almost been a way to put that into practice more, like trying to maintain maintain the sort of individual aspect, like maintain the perspective of like, okay, the world's, there's no stability to be found in the world as a whole. I truly believe that. Like if I'm looking for assurance or some sort of comfort in the physical world, in other people outside of my family or friends, not really going to find it. So it's been interesting to like really put that into use. Like, when it seems like the world is burning around, it's really nice to kind of keep the interstate, at least not the interstate like the highway, but the interstate relatively calm, trying to, which then it's like, it's almost like this weird thing where if the inner state is calm, then the physical reality, or at least the perspective of the physical reality, can also be calm, which then branches out, I think, to the relationships that are having with an individual. Not in every case. There's some people that, it's just sort of a chaotic link, but yeah, it's tough. Like when the world is burning, you can either run around screaming or keep the perspective.
There's a concept called the collective unconscious. Everybody's heard of the collective unconscious, and I think that it is okay to dislike things, and it is okay to not be nice sometimes. I think that's something that, like, most people who go, oh well, hey, if you're just positive all the time, then everything's gonna be fine. I think that, again, it's a balance, because you have to be proactive about creating value, right? And one of the reasons that I constantly talk about, like, video games and stuff, is because when people come home from work or from protesting or anything like that, that's a positive thing to look forward to. And I have so much respect for people who make things that create positive value as a result of all the stuff that's going on out there, right? And this isn't downplaying, like, everything that's going on. It's just more like you have to have a break sometimes. Otherwise, you're just going to go insane, and you're going to get more and more and more and more tribalistic, and it's just going to fuck you over in the long run. And that isn't good for anybody. It's hasn't really worked out for us as of late. So
yeah,
new plan.
I think, yeah, I feel like one of the antidotes to kind of the worldwide chaos could be more of a sort of community approach, right? Like, kind of trying to grow roots in more of the individuals, their household, and their communities, and then hopefully that would have an effect on the physical world. Much easier said than done, but I think it'll be possible.
On to a separate topic. Now, this is still VR related. You ever think about how do you think that, like, the modern generation, instead of playing with Legos, they work in game engines? That sounds like a cool concept.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
They're gonna have like 7-year-olds that are gonna be like game wizards by the time they're like 13.
Oh yeah. Because we're at a point now where, like, everybody has access to Unreal Engine 4 and Unity, and they can just, like, plop on their VR headset and then show people what is in their imagination. I think the girl that you had on before talked about this, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm really excited for that, because the human mind is capable of such horrible nightmares, but also such wonderful dreams. To quote the movie Contact. Have you seen Contact?
No, I haven't. I'll have to check it out.
It's Jodie Foster. It's a wonderful movie. I think you'd like it. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. Speaking of recommendations, have you played Res Infinite yet?
You recommended that. I still have to check it out.
Res Infinite is wonderful.
Is it a wave shooter?
It's kind of like, how do I describe Res? Think of it as like a musical Star Fox-like experience. I don't want to, like, say too much about Res, because it's one of those things that you want to go into knowing as little about it as possible, right?
Okay.
I will say this: It is not worth $30 because it is like an hour and a half long. But this is one of those instances where I'm going to recommend it anyway, even though it's an hour and a half long, because it is just is such a unique and beautiful experience in VR. It's just wonderful.
All right, I'm sold. And there's like isn't there like an extra level once you complete it?
Yes, there is. Yeah, it's newer, like because Rez started on the Dreamcast, I think, and then later got a PlayStation 2 port, and then it got to Xbox 360 Arcade, and now it's Res Infinite. Yeah, so hell of an experience in VR. It's beautiful.
Yeah, right on.
So, have you seen any good movies lately?
No, man, I've been kind of on and off Twin Peaks. Been on kind of a David Lynch kick. Great classic 90s kind of vibe going. You ever watch that show?
Man, I'm trying so hard to get into Twin Peaks. I'm trying.
It's tough.
It's just I think it's just not like it's either got like a slow start and I'm just waiting for it to like get to the crazy stuff that I heard about, but that or it's just not for me probably. I still like David Lynch's like other stuff. I like the general aesthetic of David Lynch works.
Yeah.
Because I love surreal atmosphere in general. It's great.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do like a VR thing.
Right. Oh yeah, didn't he do a VR thing? I could have sworn there was a Twin Peaks VR experience.
I think there was. I don't know. I never tried it, but I don't know. I won't say anything negative about it.
Right. It's just nice to be in a time where you can just go and find something that is within your taste. Like it's such an everlasting kind of freedom in a way. It's just beautiful.
Google click away. What about you? Seen any good animes, movies?
I've been watching a little bit of Tower of God recently. I still need to catch up on that. The cool thing about Tower of God is that typically manga is made from manga, right? But Tower of God is a Korean webcomic kind of deal adaptation, and it's I think that is really good for the anime industry as a whole if they do more stuff like that, because it's an entire well of content to pull from and adapt, and it's got just as much potential as manga does. So,
did you
generally...
Oh, my bad, dude. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Did you ever get into like manga reading or more just like adaptations?
I like I like horror manga. Like that's like the one genre that I love reading in manga format, because there's a unique kind of detail that you can only put into a manga that just doesn't translate well to anime when it comes to horror. One of the ones I'm reading right now is called Meiruko-chan, Meiruko-chan, and it's about a girl who can see ghosts, but nobody else can see ghosts, and it is a ride. It's kind of like terrifying to just think about being in her position, where she has to ignore these horrifying like monstrosities and stuff.
Oof.
Yeah.
That sounds dope. There was
Have you? Oh, go ahead.
There was a oh, my dog is having a nightmare. It's like
Oh, is Lucy all right?
Yeah, you did. Dogs sometimes do like the barking in their sleep.
Right.
Maybe a ghost was visiting her.
Oh. It reminds me of a time that my dog in my house was just barking at nothing, like in the living room.
That's creepy.
That was terrifying. Only time they ever did it too. That was something.
Hopefully it scared away the whatever it was. I think Adult Swim is doing an adaptation of a horror manga. I'm gonna look it up real quick, see if you've heard of it.
Oh yeah, the Junji Ito Spiral manga. I forgot the name of it.
I've never read the manga, but
oh dude, you gotta read Junji Ito, man. That's
Is
like
it good?
quintessential. Yes, it is.
Alright.
Skip over the Junji Ito collection anime. I'm just
Okay.
gonna say that.
Just go straight for the gold.
Yeah, just go straight for the manga. He's got so many unique works to read. I think you're gonna like at least one of them because they're just so good.
All right.
The one that is constantly being quoted is the I think it was the fault of something, where people find these holes in the side of inside of a mountain, and then they all like mysteriously are attracted to it because they find this one hole that's like made for them, and it's just read it. It's beautiful. Well, beautiful is not really a great word to describe the whole aesthetic of Junji Ito, but you'll see.
Beautifully horrific, maybe.
Yep. Well, beautifully detailed for one thing. Like, there's so much detail that goes into Junji Ito mangas.
Like illustration detail.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Part of the horror of Junji Ito manga is just how much time he puts into drawing the monster design. You'll see what I mean when you read it. That's part of the reason I like my Ruko-chan, because it feels kind of like a toned down like Junji Ito manga with a unique premise of sorts, and that is like I think going back all the way to stuff like Courage the Cowardly Dog, like you remember the Return the Slab thing. One of the best ways that you can do horror is to make things seem completely out of time and space with the rest of the world. And one of the ways that you can do that is by making it a different art style than everything else that is happening. It's just something that feels off, like it shouldn't be there, and that it's creeped into a world where it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
And
I feel like Serial Experiments Lane. Have you ever seen that show?
I need to see that so much. It's been on the list, and it's one of those anime that like everybody recommends to me, and they go, "Oh, W man, you would love this," right? Like, and I've been meaning to watch it. I just got to find the time.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I know that I would like it though. I know that I would like Serial Experiments Lane because it's right up my alley in terms of premise.
Yeah, it kind of relates to what you're saying, like the aesthetic, where it feels like this thing that's like kind of grounded in reality, but also like not, because at the time of making it almost seems like that VHS kind of like grungy style. And it was interesting. The creator was talking to the artist. I think he was watching like an interview or something. And they were saying like, while they were making the show, because it's a pretty kind of dark psychological thriller, but while they were making the show, the director or the writer was like, to the artist, he was like, make sure you guys are working on something else that's a little more lighthearted to kind of keep the yin and the yang, because your soul is gonna get like weighed down by these characters. And it's true, man. Like if you end up watching it, it's a pretty dark one, psychologically dark. Yeah.
One of my new favorite music artists, Sewers LVT, used a lot of Lane footage in a music video for one of her hit tracks. That's literally called Mr. Kill Myself. And yeah, that gives me a good idea of how Dark Lane is going to be because I've seen footage. Well, spoilers even for Lane from that music video. So you know. But yeah, it's I think that horror is a generally unexplored aspect of anime in general. I think that there's a little bit of sprinkling of it, like here and there, right? For example, like some of the stuff that happens in ReZero, for example, is undoubtedly horrifying, right? But to call it a horror anime, I don't know.
I still haven't seen it.
It's one of my favorite anime. Right behind Black Lagoon. But
what's the premise of it?
So a kid gets sent. I tell me if you've heard this before.
Sure.
A high school teenager gets sent to another world, but this time he's not the chosen one. Really, he's got chosen one powers, but it's kind of more of a punishment of sorts. And you will understand that once you watch the series. I'm not going to spoil anything.
All right. I always see the thumbnail of it, but I've never dove in. So
it's great anime in my opinion. I really like it. I brought up Black Lagoon. That's a fantastic anime. I think if you like Tarantino films, you'll love Black Lagoon.
The violent?
Well, yeah, but not just that, but like kind of the general like mood of the story, right? Like it's very Tarantino-esque, and it covers some really, really, really dark topics, but it is generally just a great action anime with good characters and good dialogue. I recommend watching the English dub for Black Lagoon. This is one of the only times I will. No, it's not. Like this is one of the only times I will recommend the English dub of an anime. Same with Cowboy Bebop, but like, because the English dub for Black Lagoon takes some liberties with the dialogue that really, really work with the setting, and I think that if you actually read the subtitles, and with the English dub on, you kind of go, oh yeah, no, that line of dialogue works better in this situation. Sometimes, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just generally good all-around anime. It's a shame that you need like a European Netflix VPN to get easy access to it. Like that kind of ticks me. But let's talk about that for a moment. So, what do you call it? The streaming services, right? Remember when we all moved to Netflix because cable companies kept splitting everything across so many different services. Like if you wanted to watch a certain thing, you either had to get Dish Network or you had to get DirecTV or you had to get all that stuff, right? And everybody got so tired of it that they turned to piracy, right? I'm seeing that problem resurface because every single major group wants a slice of the pie. You got Amazon Prime, you got Netflix, you got Disney Plus, you got all these stupid services that all want a sub fee that adds up over time. And I'm seeing that resurface the problem of cable television. And then you have the problem with needing a VPN to see certain things, even though it's on the service, they have the license for it, right? But you need to be in a certain region to see certain things. For example, European Netflix has most of Studio Ghibli's works. They have Black Lagoon. They have a bunch of other kinds of anime, but not on the USA server, right? And so they have it. They have the English subtitles. They have the English dub, but they don't bring it to the States. It's so weird. I hate licensing of that sort.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be just like a region locked license that they have or something.
I just don't understand the logic behind a region lock license. But if it's a streaming service, right? Wouldn't you want as many people to see it as possible? The content is there. It's right there.
Mm.
You just got to like open up the gates, for people to see it.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so frustrating.
It's tough. At least the VPNs are like pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
But even
yeah.
then, it's such a,
If there's one reason, like even if you're not like a privacy aficionado, right? Like there's always a reason to get those Express VPN type and NordVPN type stuff. It's like it's like because when you can change your region, you're able to watch whatever you want basically. Because region locking, what's that, right? So but we shouldn't have to do that. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you need to mask your friggin' IP to go see an entire new selection of things. And people wonder, what's that? Why is there so much piracy? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know why there's so much piracy. Big think. Yeah, man.
Piracy machine go burr.
That's not to say people are entitled to watch whatever they want. Obviously, that there's, because I know there's going to be someone in the comment section is like, well, they got to do this, and this, and this, and I get it, but at the same time, there's got to be some better way. Like,
yeah, I'm sure it'll eventually all. I don't know. I think it'll open up more and more as we get into the age of streaming. So just, it's relatively new. Like 10 years ago, still were suffering through commercials, commercial breaks.
Well, commercials aren't really the problem. It's
Cable.
The repetition. Oh no, right. What I mean is, I never really had like I understand that generally the thing about commercials is that they fund free viewings, right? Like that's the reality of the situation. And the problem I have with them though is the repetition. You always have that one commercial that even if you like it, you've seen it so many times that you hate it, right? I just wish that wasn't really a thing, because there are better ways to do things, and I'm not sure if they're logistically possible or there's just a stubbornness of some kind. Because I'm not working at these companies that are doing these decisions. So what do I know, right? But oh man, it is so inconvenient.
Yeah. It's I remember when you'd be watching TV and then the commercial break would come on, but they would turn up the volume of the commercials. Do you remember that?
Oh,
the
yeah.
worst.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I would have to have the remote ready, just turn the volume up and down.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Pistol with their
I've always wanted to ask something, Jack. This is completely unrelated to what we're talking about. But do you do these week in VR and 24 hours in VR and these challenges to push the limits of what you think is capable, or is it just something that you do for fun? I always wanted to know.
Yeah, it's not. If I really look within, if I'm questioning myself, I'm not really motivated by pushing limits. It's more what I think would make an interesting story.
That's a good reason to do something.
Yeah. It's like, especially with a week in VR, it's like this new, it's like the age of exploration, but we're still in our rooms, right? So it's like,
right.
Yeah, it's just fun to explore. Yeah. And then
that's cool. I mean, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with the more physical world experiments. Those are kind of the same reasoning, just like what is a mundane thing that I can do and try to make it entertaining, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the streams are always fun. Like I always leads to a good time. So they're great. They're great things to do.
Yeah, man. It's always fun seeing you in chat and get some company. I remember the No Man's Sky stream where it was
Oh yeah.
Coconut, you and I just kind of in there like late night. Yeah, those were good times.
Right.
We gotta do something like that again.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and especially the standing thing that you just did, where we ended it off with Napoleon Dynamite. That was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I never got to see that movie until that day, so that was cool.
It's a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I always figured it was kind of like a meditative thing, but yeah.
Yeah, it can get a little bit meditative. I think the darkness was probably more meditative than anything.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers, man. Thanks for the conversation. It's always great exploring with you.
Thanks for having me. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yeah, man.
Big monkey.